What's up, everybody? Back at you. We're back here to talk about some of the most recent events that's happening in the world. Uh, BLACKFIRE-RISING channel. I'm Fire. Got my brother here. What's up,
What's up, man?
man?
Look, I
Kanan
don't know.
Powers.
Yeah, it's some happening. We're gonna talk about it.
So yeah, man. This episode we're gonna talk about this most recent parting of our brother Coolio, man. Coolio, 59 years old, sudden and untimely passing of our brother. And I want to talk about how I believe it ties into a larger agenda. Um, some things that we've spoken about on this channel in the past, man. But have you heard about that? I'm sure you heard about that, Kanan.
Yeah, man, I heard about it recently. I wasn't sure if it was something that I had missed, which is rare, but once I realized that it was recent, I just thought it was the timing was kind of off, so it made it kind of suspicious to me.
Facts, man. It's hella suspicious because it's untimely, and
Mm.
man, I can't count on one hand the black men that are being taken out. It's almost like when you talk about, and you all will hear the clip because I'm gonna uh play this clip from one of his last interviews, and I want to say shout out to Hip Hop News Uncensored. It's titled "Coolio Breaks the Oath, Exposes Disturbing Sex Acts He Was Asked to Perform." And man, it's almost like in this spiritual warfare, in this war over culture, in this war over our lives, and you know, and in the vein of Black lives in this warfare, man, it's like masculinity is something that the mainstream does not tolerate. And I'm sort of trying to tie this together in the sense of whether you're talking about Michael Jackson or Prince or even Kevin Samuels, Chadwick Boseman, and Coolio, and these men that we can name that have had these untimely deaths, that have died before their time or not to natural causes. And I want to be clear, when I say masculinity, I'm not talking about stereotypical definitions of masculinity or the octave of the voice, etc. I mean the message, and the message that would challenge mainstream thought or the mainstream message, meaning is what this man's saying going against mainstream and the sort of character, the otherwise character assassination of the black man. And keep in mind, a message can be spoken directly verbally, it can be written, it can be put in music, or it can be communicated through one's actions, as in the case of, say, Michael and Prince, who, went to war with these giants, with these industries, and like David, prevailed. But what you got on that, man? And what does this death mean to you, signify, and what is it that you want to communicate in this episode?
Well, basically the pattern and chain of events. So anytime you're dissecting something, I think it's important to look at pattern, right? They say a pattern of behavior. So then it's not an isolated event. Anytime anybody does any reasonable scientific research or investigation, they look for pattern. So when you think about the pattern, like you said, and the untimely events, you can take this all the way back to like Sam Cooke, right? If you're familiar with that, and then tying it into the music industry or entertainment industry, where you'll have people like you say who communicate this message of going against. It's a long list. It's almost like when we talk about police brutality and we have this long list of unarmed black males. It's like when you go into the entertainment industry, like I said, if you go all the way back to Sam Cooke, and then you got, Easy E, Tupac, and you look at all of these people and the messages behind it, it's a pattern that they target, black males and black males who are trying to empower or speak either unity for black people or control of our own, economic system or product or artistic work. They all kind of giving this same message, and they all die these mysterious deaths. Very convincing to the public when they're not paying attention, because it's like, oh, drug overdose, or this, that. And now the new thing is just like getting shot or heart attack, right? So you come all the way down to like Nipsey Hussle and Coolio. You can literally see a trend. So I think I want to pinpoint the fact that it's not really a theory at that point because you really have evidence to prove that this is a pattern. So that's one thing that I really want people to be aware of and conscious as we move through and talk about Coolio's the most recent one, death.
Right, right. Facts, man. That makes sense. And like two things that you said struck a chord is like one, um, this whole these generic causes. I mean, like this thing that they tend to do with like, oh, this is a heart related thing. They'll cite sort of the death itself in terms of like heart related as being sort of a cause, but it's so generic, you know, it doesn't explain anything. It doesn't say anything. Anybody that dies, obviously they're in cardiac arrest because, you know, by definition, when the heart stops beating, you know, that's it. Or this whole, you know, like you said, drug overdose thing. Um, I think that sometimes people get confused and they miss the trail in the sense of, for example, a war against masculinity is not to be fixated on the actual character or iconic figure themselves, but it's the message, it's what they represent, and it's the signal that they send in general, because you have masses of not only young Black males, but by extension, you have masculinity around the planet that can get inspiration from certain figures. If that figure is a strong representative of masculinity or in defiance of the popular opinion, that figure becomes problematic for, I would say, you know, the mainstream, i.e., you know, government, mainstream, you know, media, however you want to say it. To that end, I just had real quick, bro. I know we talked about this on the channel before because I remember reciting this, but this was from what the FBI, what Hoover had to say about COINTEL and preventing the rise of a Black Messiah. And this is verbatim. This is a quote. And this was number 2 in their agenda, COINTEL agenda against Black America. Number 2, it reads, prevent the rise of a Messiah, of a Black Messiah who could unify and electrify the militant Black nationalist movement. Now, that is anybody who would, by definition, be perceived as militant or hostile, in other words, against, you know, the powers that be in the status quo. And they want to prevent the rise of such a person. And they go on to mention Malcolm X as being a potential for that Black Messiah, Martin Luther King, Stokely Carmichael, Elijah Muhammad, that these were all Black males that were aspiring to the position. But they mentioned King was lesser of a threat, or he would be a contender should he abandon his supposed obedience to white liberal doctrines. Man, it's like sometimes when they say history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. I mean, white liberalism in terms of a doctrine, if you look at who they perceive as being the less threatening Black males, that holds true to this day, man. People that just go along with these
Mm-hmm.
certain movements and doctrines. And, you know, they are not, they are less of a threat to the powers that be, man. What you think about that?
I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Like you said, you read that verbatim, and that's a real quote. So it just lets you know that it's a very real thing. And I like to steer people away from the whole like I said, the not just looking for attention to create some kind of conspiracy theory. Like at some point a theory becomes not a theory once you have facts. And I think that type of quote to me just builds the case that people should be more conscious and aware that there is a deliberate um force that is anti black male and black male masculinity for sure.
Right, right, man. So yeah, that being said, man, I just sort of wanted to draw attention to that, man. Like all this slew of untimely deaths. And as you can see, the title of this video that we're gonna, cite some of these sound bites that we're gonna put in here. And I want to say fair use and shout out again to Hip Hop News Uncensored. The title being Coolio breaks the oath, exposes disturbing sex acts he was asked to perform. Now you'll hear when they're talking about this sort of the some of the things that I've heard people say about the industry, these artists, these insiders that come out and they break their silence. And it does seem like something, stranger than fiction, man. But I think one of the eerie things about it is when you look at the overall patterns, you look at the longevity of persons in the industry who does well, who tends to have problems, you start to see these patterns emerge.
You've been in the industry a long time. How was it in the music industry? That whole conversation about the gatekeepers real, the rituals, things people got to do, blood sacrifice thing. I don't know if you got into all that, but can you kind of go there, being as though you were in the belly of the beast in the music industry?
I've read about all of that, and I only can say my truth. You would think that they would come at me, and I think they did it sideways though. Nobody never got at me directly and said, "We want you to join us, and we're doing this." That's never happened. But I will tell you, I've had motherfuckers come at me on some weirdo shit, like on some gay shit. I've had motherfuckers come at me on some, "Oh, you should do this" type shit. And I was like, what? Man, why the fuck would I do that? That make no sense. I view that as being inhuman. I view that as, I would never do that. So, and then right when there was some things that I was trying to do that I felt were important, things that I felt would help other people, shit started happening to me. Little shit started happening, and I didn't even address the shit really, because who the fuck, and when you're a celebrity, bro, when something happens, whether it's true or it's not true, once it's been said, for most people it's true, because people don't do research to find out if something is true about a person or not. Whatever they hear, they deem it to be truth. My life, where there's a lot of shit I know that I want to tell people. It's a lot of things that I want to teach, but I'm afraid. I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm scared, because I got 4 grandchildren, and I got children that are in this world. I got people I care about, and I got people that I care about that don't necessarily believe what I believe.
Yeah,
and I'm not. I have no fear of death, and I think that those that would oppose my beliefs, they've probably done enough. If somebody's after me, or if somebody's watching me, then they know enough about me to know that I have no fear of death. So killing me don't mean shit. It just confirms that what I said was true.
They're coming for him. When you look at Cosby, what he was trying to do, and the sensationalism, the character assassination he's had to endure. And this is a man in his push knocking on 90, man.
Yep, they don't got no restriction. I mean, even when Nick Cannon tried to dip his toe in the door, it's like they came for him.
Right.
And then, so like you said, it's a pattern for sure. And they all talking the same, basically against the mainstream concept or the mainstream way of thinking or opinion. And it don't have to be right or wrong. It's just the fact that it's not what they want to push. And then they attack these people in one way or another.
Right. And remember, when we're talking about the deaths of Black males, and warfare for the culture and for warfare against Black masculinity, casualties can happen. I mean, some of the soldiers are taken out physically, but when you talk about character assassination, still a form of assassination, and it's a form of death. And I think sometimes what mainstream does is sometimes it's more expedient to just kill someone physically. Sometimes it's more expedient to sort of make an example of them and crucify them, as it were. Or when you look at the case of Cosby, you're talking more character assassination. And effectively, the liveliness of his career and his influence has been effectively, murdered, and his character assassination and effectively silenced. As it say, dead men tell no tales.
Yeah, that's that's definitely something deep to chew on, think
So,
about.
was there any part of I know you watched the interview that they did on Hip Hop Media. Was there any
Yeah.
part of that interview in particular that stood out to you that you wanted to address?
Well, yeah, I mean it was an interesting interview overall. One of the parts that stood out to me is as Coolio was explaining how he started speaking out a little bit about some things that he thought were kind of shady in the industry, and he notices a chain of events of bad things kind of happen to him, right? And then he says, as he retract and self-reflect and think maybe he's tripping or he's questioning his sanity really, and he kind of backtracks because his son gets into some trouble, and he feels that it's not worth his family being hurt, and he says the bad things stop happening. I thought that was real significant because again, it was that blatant to him to notice that bad things happening when I speak up, and when I stop, bad things stop happening. So that's basic psychology, like to penalize somebody, to stop a behavior. These are psychological um, things that have been measured to stop a person from doing a certain behavior. So to me, it stood out because it just let it be known that this was a very real thing happening to this man, and he wasn't going crazy, and he decides to speak up again. So that part stood out to me because I think a lot of times we'll question our sanity if we don't have a wave of people supporting what we say, or we think these things are happening, but we're not quite sure how to prove it. And then in his case, he actually has something to measure it with because he had a chain of events or bad things happening, and they kind of stopped, and it just basically gave him the courage to know that he was on to something.
Right. And I think that's very effective. I think like for example, if you're in a fight and you see when the enemy comes directly and the assault is direct, you can prepare and defend. It's less of in a lot of ways, it's less traumatic because it allows you to face your enemy, and then you can focus and you can fight. But if the enemy is sort of doing sneaky things, like say if you're in a dark room and you're getting sucker punched or stabbed in the back and you're not sure why and they won't say anything, there's something about that insidious nature of it. It's sneaky, it's cowardly. It's like a
Hmm.
sniper. If there's a sniper, you can't see them, but they continue to snipe you. Uh, then
Hmm.
I think in terms of a coward's way of fighting, that's very effective.
Right. Yeah,
And I
for
think
sure.
like it's not and it's not just that happens. I think you had Michael Jackson come out and say, that the industry is wicked, that they require, people to do things that, they'll sort of. And when you look at Cosby's history, for example, the first time around when he was trying to buy CBS, believe it was CBS, and then all of a sudden, his son got murdered, and it seemed like it was an obvious message because nothing was taken from his son, not his expensive watch, not any of his money. He was just murdered. And consequently, Cosby stopped everything he did. He didn't have the energy to pursue that because at the time he was saying he didn't fear for his own death, but it's a low blow. It's a wicked thing to go after someone's loved ones, um, as a way
Yeah,
to get them
definitely.
to drop the campaign.
Yeah, it's classic abuse when you think of domestic violence, right? And I know we talk domestic violence a lot about family structures, but if you think of it as a nation and how the nation oppresses black people, it's a domestic abusive relationship where it's known that when people try to escape those type of relationships, that the abuser will come after the family a lot of times to make the person suffer, thinking that they had something to do with that death, because that's a different type of psychological trauma for you to know that somebody in your family has died, and it's because of you. It's your fault
Right.
because you wanted to speak about this, that, or the third. So I think that's just another dynamic to for people to think about. Like, this is a real psychologically abusive relationship when you see these patterns.
And I think that this ties into it because, obviously we're talking about in this interview, Coolio expresses how he was concerned about some of the repercussions of him speaking out, you know, touching his children, touching his grandchildren, man. And that's a shame. And I
Yep.
think the fact that he was on the verge of speaking out on some of these things in the industry, and he said it, for himself, this is not a conspiracy. This is a man who lived a life, who walked that stage. And he said he was concerned. And when he stopped sort of his aspirations of speaking out and being helpful to his people, a lot of the things stopped happening to him, the being watched, the weird things, his son getting convicted, when he shouldn't have, all this, cowardly stuff stopped happening in his life. And now the brother's gone.
Yeah, it's a tragedy for sure.
Yeah, man. I'm not sure how much time is left in this, but I don't know if you had followed any of that went down, what's going down with Lil Boosie.
No, I actually haven't seen that. I'm gonna have to catch up. I know Lil Boosie been in he been on the blackball list for a while because he has been speaking up like relentlessly against the alphabet crew and just other things. And I think that it just comes to show like this is a person that everybody at one point was like, oh, Lil Boosie, you say Lil Boosie and everybody gonna rush to the concert and everything. But now it just shows how quick and how flaky, people can be. Because now it's just like, oh, anti Lil Boosie because he ain't saying something popular. And to me, that's just ridiculous. But I'm gonna look into what you said specifically because I'm just curious of it, and I haven't seen anything about the Dahmer um, TV show. I mean, I haven't watched it or anything, so I would have to just freshen up on that too. What is the controversy about it? And yeah, so I would definitely have to listen to that.
Yeah, man, I'm actually thinking about canceling Netflix, bro. It's a lot of sick shit on there, man, just to put it bluntly.
Yeah, I
And the
believe it.
fact of sort of even humanizing or showing some sort of narrative of Dahmer, who literally was, well, he was part of the alphabet thing. And, he would lure
Yeah.
these gay black men and wind up eating them, man. They found something like 30 bodies in his remains in his crib. But anyway, man, what I wanted to say about that Lil Boosie, man, I see that as a win.
Mm.
Often when we're the forerunners, when we are the leaders, we take those arrows. The higher up you go, or the more obvious you become, the more arrows you take. And I think it's an honor because you're on the side of righteousness. And I think the majority of the people are dumb. The majority of the people are ignorant. And by virtue of them ignoring, and like Coolio said in the interview, people hate what they need. People like what they want.
Hmm.
So Coolio said, it was hard for him to give people what they needed because that's what they hate. And that's the majority of the people. So when you're doing something and you're a leader, and the majority of the people hate you, yes, stressful. But then at the same time, it's almost like cleaning house, man, because
Mhm.
the ones that remain, the ones that ride with you, man, they're true. And that could be 30% of the people or less, but hey, that's the ones you want. That's how all the real movements are done. That's how the get down is. Even when you look at popularity levels for even Martin Luther King, who the mainstream defined as leftist leaning, he I think he had a 82% disapproval rating or something. Malcolm
Mhm.
X's was even lower. But when you look at the effectiveness of the struggle and what they gained, they're still trying to assassinate those characters to this day and haven't been
Right.
able to do it,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, that's true. It's definitely worth it when you look at what you're fighting for. And like you said, being on the side of righteousness, that's got to be enough to inspire the next person or the next generation to still follow in those footsteps.
Right, man. They say no pain, no gain, when you're in the gym and you're hitting those weights and stuff like that. And it is painful, but at some point, when the system becomes, the healthier the system get and the stronger the muscle gets, they actually start to develop a relationship with those weights, with that resistance. And then at some point, getting in the gym, that resistance psychologically, it stops representing pain, as it were. It can be physically painful, but the pleasure nodes, the response, the testosterone, the the masculinity that is sparked by getting in the gym and hitting those weights, at some point it becomes something that becomes a euphoric experience. And you can see that when you're in the gym, you're like, oh, I can't wait to get in there, to the point that when you don't get in the gym, you kind of feel bad about it. Like, I haven't been in there in a while. I don't feel right.
Right.
I got to
Right.
get in there. And that, I think, is something that, the fact that what makes you healthy, what makes you stronger, can also be a source of pleasure and euphoria. I think that's how it's meant to be. I think mainstream has trained us to think of, the pain as something that belongs in only a negative category, and
Mhm.
not as part and parcel of something that we equate in our mind with something that's making us stronger, with somewhere we need to be, because we know that that's the source of the strength, and that's what, I try to train and reprogram myself psychologically to apply that, not only to, obviously, like, weightlifting or something, but in all those battlefronts, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, most definitely. And overall, I think that's what a lot of us need to do is
Fact.
recognize the power and potential that we have in because the worst opinion you can have nowadays, and it's so obvious, is to be a straight black male. Nobody, as much as they talk about
Right.
acceptance and accepting people's point of views and all these things, nobody wants to give a straight black male the microphone because they know once you start speaking that truth, it just shuts everything else down. And that's why you become anti this and anti that, and they have to shut you down quickly because they know that that truth is going to resonate with some people. It's not going to take long. So that's why you have to try so hard to suppress it. That's my opinion.
Facts. I think you're right, man. But I think we're all up in the air. And like I like to say, man, that metaphor of flying a plane, it takes a lot of fuel and energy to keep something up in the air against gravity. But truth is like gravity, man. And we're all up in the air at this time. And eventually everything is gonna have to come back to truth. Truth is there like the
Right.
ground. It's
Right.
like gravity. And when you get done, with these flights of fancy that media tells you, and, a man can actually not be a man, and, you know, maybe a male lion is actually a lioness in his mind, and it doesn't, you know, all this stuff. At some point, truth is like reality, and everything is gonna come back. I'd rather stay grounded, so that when truth wins in the end, I don't come crashing down. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So yeah, man, that's what I had on that, bro. It looks like, you know, we're perfect timing, man. I'll let you take it out, man, if you got something.
No, I don't got nothing to say. I just want everybody to, keep listening. We're gonna keep coming out with content. And we appreciate the time.
Oh, I know what you didn't say. Shout out to Dope Nation.
Shout out to Dope Nation. Yes, please. We got more additional content on Dope Nation as well.
All right. Well, with that, we out. We'll be back.
Peace.
Peace.